Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Very happy to have here at our encore webinar following the Tableau conference. We have a lot of registrations today, which is great, and I see a lot of people logging on right now to go to webinar. So give us 1 more minute. We'll just let everybody to finish their previous meeting, click on the link, install GoToWebinar, be ready with the sound and all that, maybe grab a glass of water or coffee or something, and we'll start in 1 minute. Thank you. All right, we are 1 minute past. Time to start with the introduction and everything. Well, once again, for people who just joined now, I'd like to welcome all of you to our encore webinar following the Tableau conference. And today we'll talk about having an enterprise grade Tableau, and that's what does it mean really is letting your data truly shine. We'll do the introduction in a minute. I'm joined with my colleague, friends, working for Deloitte, Nicholas. Nicholas has a webcam issue this afternoon, but we did a rehearsal just before, and he can definitely hear talk to us. Nick, do you want to just say a quick hello? We'll do the intro later, just to make sure you can indeed hear us.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone.
Excellent. Good stuff. All right. So I started this slide at the conference. I know we're physically not there, but still, I want to thank everybody for joining today and registering to this encore, because it was quite interesting. Year after year, this is my 3rd year presenting in a row, presenting at the Tableau conference, and every year there's more and more sessions around governance and trust, and there was 42 sessions with governance in their title or description and 29 with trust, and it really shows how important this topic is for enterprises using Tableau or other analytics solution. So yeah, thank you for joining today, but it's a good recognition how important analytics governance is for everybody these days. Now, I have a few quotes that I will present today, but the first quote is from Tableau, actually. And Tableau was created, their motto is to help people see, understand, and act on data. But to be able to act on this data and trust the content and have trustworthy content, it requires analytics governance. Now, despite companies doing a lot of governance efforts, BI issues are common, and this is usually where I'll ask people to raise their hand, say, hey, who recognizes, who have faced these different BI issues in the past? Very simple issues by having somebody just about to go in a meeting and looking at the dashboard and saying, oh, is this number right? Usually my margin is 15%. How come it says 2%, so 80%? So there's clearly something wrong with this dashboard. Or you go in this folder and suddenly you look at HR dashboards and suddenly you have 3 different dashboards and all 3 are showing different number of employees in the company, in the country, in the department. Maybe they're all correct because they have different definitions, but unless it's clear, it makes people question if there are multiple truths, multiple different numbers, and maybe some of them are incorrect. So again, a lot of reports or dashboard is not necessarily the right thing. Now, frustrating user experience. Maybe the data is right, But if the experience is bad because it's very slow to open or things work half of the time only, it means that people will go back to silos, go back to ungoverned data and work in offline Excel spreadsheets. Now, of course, Excel is a popular solution, but again, it can create a lot of issues. And now we're 2025, we cannot go around without talking about AI. And yes, I'm going to use Tableau Pulse, I'm going to use agents, those are fantastic solutions, but can I trust what AI is returning to me? Now, why do we have these BI issues? Why do we have people, have mistrust perhaps in the content? That's because dashboards are only the visible part of the iceberg, of the data. What you see is at the top, and what you see is this: hey, I have this fantastic dashboard, it looks great, I'm doing a lot of governance effort with my data, in the back end. So I know my ETL, my data quality, ingesting the data. I have this data ops framework. I know the data is right, so my analytics will be right as well. So, what can be wrong? What is the pain of seeing only the tip part of the iceberg? Well, that's because of the hidden part of the iceberg behind an analytics solution. And I was presenting a few months ago, actually before Christmas, with Matthew Miller. Matthew Miller referred to analytics dashboards almost as analytics programs, solutions, apps nowadays. And these things are complex systems with a lot of things in the background. And all of you who design Tableau content, if you have teams, building Tableau content, you know that you have to connect to one or many data sources, and you'll deal with joins. And then usually I'll ask to raise hands who is using custom SQL, and people are, are laughing at this usually, but there's so many things going on behind a Tableau data source and a Tableau workbook that you have BI issues. So today in this session, we'll talk about letting your data truly shine, how to make sure that all the great work you do in Tableau has the right results, to not have these common BI issues. And we'll talk about doing what we call analytics governance. Now, I'm Patrick. I'm the head of product management here at Wiiisdom. We are a Tableau partner. We've been working with Tableau for almost 5 years now. We're one of the preferred technology partner. We do analytics governance, version management. We do a lot of things which I'll talk about in a second. But enough about me. I'd like to introduce Nick. Nick, you want to say a few words?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My pleasure to be here. Thanks for joining. Sorry for the technical issues with the camera. No idea where those are coming from. My name is Nick. I started as a Tableau consultant a couple of years ago, then had the privilege to join Salesforce as a Tableau solution engineer. So I know both worlds, inside and outside. Now I'm back on the other side. I'm doing implementation projects, and today I'm leading the alliance between Deloitte Germany and Tableau. Very happy to be here today.
And it's great to have you again, Nick. Nick and I had the pleasure to present together on stage in San Diego and have a few drinks later that evening, also very important. I'm sure you'll agree. Just before we continue to the next slide, just mini housekeeping. This session is recorded today, so we'll send you an email with a link. I don't know if it's done later today or tomorrow. And if you have any questions, please use the questions box in the GoToWebinar interface, and I'll make sure that Nick and I review these questions by the end of the webinar. All right. So the agenda for today, well, we just talked about BI issues being common. So should you trust your content? Now, to put in place analytics governance, one good thing to do this is by talking about trust marks. And this is a fundamental part of governance, which you'll see that Wiiisdom is a precursor to this technology. We are even patent pending, which is really cool. We'll then introduce the maybe obvious but difficult to put in place with analytic solutions, how to move from reactive governance to proactive governance. And we even started to work on something that will release later this summer that we even call preemptive governance. So not only looking for problems, so proactive, but maybe detecting problems before they arrive, preventive. So again, very, very interesting stuff. And I'll do a short demo at the end of this session. All right, I'd like to pass it over to Nick to just put a bit more context around governance and BI common issues with a real life story from one of your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me tell you a quick story about one of our customers who's actually one of the largest construction material producers. So a couple of years ago, they approached us with something that they thought was a data problem. So they had invested millions in modernizing their data warehouses, centralizing the sources, implementing governance policies, ensuring all the data quality. So technically, the warehouse was really pristine, but their business users, at the end of the day, still weren't happy. The executives, they didn't trust the dashboards. The sales teams in different countries had completely different views on on the performance of the company, and no one could really agree on basic KPIs like margin or customer profitability. So the question was, what was going wrong? Well, the data was governed, but their analytics weren't. So each country had its own BI team. Dashboards were built in isolation using different logic, different filters, and even sometimes different definitions. For example, what a customer was really. And there were no standards, no versioning, no ownership. So people at the end of the day spent more time debating the numbers than actually acting on them. So that was when we came in, and we didn't come in to re-architect the data platform, but really to implement analytical governance. So what we did was introducing 3 different approaches. So firstly, we defined very explicit roles like dashboard owners, so having a responsible person for one specific dashboard. We had the role of metric stewards, so those were people who were responsible just in quotation marks, just for a set or a single metric to make sure that everything upstream and downstream of this metric is all right, that it has clear definitions. That was their priority to do. And then we had analytical product managers or APMs, so people who are responsible for a set of these products. The second thing we did is we created a centralized KPI repository that was actually used with shared definitions and logic baked into reusable semantic models. I think today you would refer to this as what Tableau Semantics is offering since, I think, last week, since the Tableau conference. And then the third and very important process we established is a lifecycle management for analytical products, which means everything from requirements engineering over production until the end of life. And I think the last mile here is, again, really important. Because I've seen many who have processes for requirements engineering and production, but almost no one knows how to end of life a dashboard. And if you think of your own environments, you probably agree that there's dozens of dashboards and projects who haven't been touched for the last maybe a year, maybe even longer, but nobody really dares to delete all of those because somebody somewhere might still use it. So within the 6 months after we implemented these processes, the impact was really tangible. So the executive team then finally had a single version of truth that they trusted. The sales teams aligned on shared targets. And what was most important was that the time spent on creating new assets dropped by roughly 40%. And this also came with a shift in their culture because analytics became a shared language and not a source of debate. So yes, data governance is crucial, not gonna argue, but without governance of the products built on top of the data, it's like building a house on a solid ground and then letting each room be designed by a different architect with their own blueprints. And this would bring you up to end in chaos rather than clarity.
Thanks, Nick. That's really interesting. And you said the last kilometer. It's exactly that. Is don't stop the effort you already have in place with your backend data, what I refer to here as your data ops, but just continue these good practices all the way to the end. Because at the end of the day, your end users are making decisions on dashboards and reports, not on data sets. So it's important that that you eliminate these BI issues that will, inevitably create loss of trust in your content. And if you have, if you don't trust the content and then you revert to doing other things and using dashboards, or if those dashboards are not governed or use offline data, well, that creates a lot of risks. And risk at the conference, I did a session with Tableau where we were talking about regulated industries, and we use the example of healthcare and life science. And in this industry, you have GXP regulations, and if you don't govern and if you don't follow the GXP regulations, well, yes, you can have financial risk for the company by losing money or by not earning the money they could have earned, but it creates other issues. Being healthcare, you could affect life of patients. So again, there's a lot of risk out there created if you don't trust or if the content isn't correct. And this is where you need to do governance all the way to this last kilometer, which is in this case Tableau. Now, I said I had a few quotes today. That's the second one of the day. And I like this one from the 7th president of Finland. And he said that the beginning of all wisdom, now I work for Wiiisdom, I had to change the 3 I's here, but the beginning of all wisdom is the acknowledgement of fact. So to have wisdom, you need to know things. And this is where at Wiiisdom, we want to change how people consume analytics. We want to introduce a new concept. And this is something you already do every day. And again, before I introduce facts and having wisdom in your analytics content, let's just go back to Nick for a couple more minutes where he'll tell you how you already do that every day.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, so I think everyone here, well, chances are that almost every one of you in the audience regular drives a car, right? However, chances are also that not every one of you knows what a timing chain is or what happens if the timing chain breaks. And I bet that only, let's say 1 out of 100 know the distinct sound of a timing chain that is about to break. So the question really is, how do you know that something is about to break? Now, think of the last time when you were in a hurry to get somewhere and you took your car to get there. Maybe it was during your last vacation when you needed to rush to the airport, or it was an important meeting or family dinner. So whenever you were in a rush and you took your car, did you manually check the gas level in your car or the oil or tire pressure? Well, of course you didn't, right? Because in complex systems like in cars, we simply expect that we get proactively warned if something is about to go wrong. We simply expect that some notification pops up on our car dashboard when our timing chain is about to break, right? But for some strange reason, in complex systems like analytical systems, we do not have the same expectation. For some reason, we just trust that everything will be okay. So now you might be thinking that in Tableau, you have your certified data sources, and that is great. Please continue to certify your data sources. However, I think that this is simply not enough. From experience, I know that usually these data sources, they get certified once. In most cases, it's when they are created, but then they're rarely getting recertified, which means that you might be working with a data source that was certified about 5 years ago. And this would be the equivalent of saying, why should I care about my timing chain? It was perfectly okay when I bought the car 5 years ago. So let me tell you a different story of what can happen if you have no proactively systems at place. It's completely different. So on January 11th in 2023, the FAA, so the Federal Aviation Administration in the US, had to ground all their domestic and international flights for the entire day. And that meant more than 1,000 canceled and almost 10,000 delayed flights and an insane reputational damage, of course. And all of this because of one tiny human error in a single text file that couldn't be fixed in time. And I guess the message here really is that in complex systems, it is only a matter of time until something will go wrong. And you better have systems in place that proactively warn you if anything is about to derail.
So Nick, thank you for that. And this is very I'd like to take an analogy everybody can understand here. So at Wiiisdom, this is where we help organizations, and we are partnered with Deloitte as well. This is where we help organizations with their automate testing, lifecycle management. Nick was giving examples of that in his real-life customer stories, but maybe even more importantly, the continuous monitoring. So when you're in production, we have added this new content, where I'm sure you've done lots of tests to make sure it's right. How do you make sure it continues to be right moving forward, that there's no problems down the road that will be introduced? You know, not necessarily because you made a mistake in Tableau, but there's some changes somewhere that makes the content behave differently and then be incorrect. So continuous monitoring is super important. So at Wiiisdom, we help with the entire life cycle of your content. Make sure that you test, you test a lot of different things: user experience, performance, security, accuracy of the data during the development cycle. It could be development in a dev environment. I hope you have a dev site or a dev project somewhere before going in production, or simply, we know the reality. A lot of self-service things is done in production, and then some things in production being self-service ends up being used by a wider, wider teams, organization. So test a lot of things. If you work with different sites or projects or environments, make sure to promote. And when you promote, you do regression testing. And then, when you promote and you need to update to a new version because you resolve some problems, or you introduce new things in your workbooks, have a version of all these things. So in regulated environments, you can track these changes. If you made a mistake, you can roll back, you can preview doing different versions. So again, version management is super powerful. And then at the end of the day, certify your content. Let the users know, the fact to have Wiiisdom, or the car, knowing that you have enough gas to go to your next destination. Certify the content to let users know that they can use that data source to create a new workbook, or they can use the dashboard to make decisions and act on the data. And I'll do a final analogy here. You do that every day. You do it maybe unknowingly with your car, right? But you do it when you go on the holidays, or you go to the restaurant, or you book a hotel somewhere. You want to know, I personally use Google Maps, but TripAdvisors and other system, you want to know the reviews of that hotel. Now, sometimes those review sites are a little bit cheeky. They say, hey, it's 4.7 out of 5, or this restaurant is 9.7 or something like that. But I don't want to know in the last 10 years what the average score is. I want to know how that restaurant was last night or in the last few days. It's not important if the restaurant was good 2 years ago, because they have changed the menu, they've changed the chef, a lot of things happened. So I want to have a recent information, a recent fact about these places. Well, what about you were consuming your analytics exactly the same way? Like Nick said, you don't want to know that the data source or the dashboard worked when it was put in production weeks, months, years ago. You want to know that it was working this morning when it's been recertified. And if it didn't work for some reason, that you were proactively informed. And this is something that I'm sure you heard about. Gartner talks a lot about this as well, to have watermarking or something for end users to understand that the content they want to use has the quality that it deserves and it's reliable. And what I'll show you in a few minutes now about this automatic and automatic and dynamic certification of content in Tableau. This is something that we have invented at Wiiisdom, and we are patent pending. So it's all about moving from reactive. You have content published, they work at some point, but one day they don't work for whatever reason, and then you have end users contacting you directly. This is what is creating the lack of trust, risks, low adoption, silos, working with local Excel spreadsheets and that sort of things, to proactive. Have this continuous monitoring system in place, analytics governance, where if a test or validation fails, automatically what you would do, what Wiiisdom would do for you, is decertify the content. So the users about to use the data source, about to use a dashboard, will know, okay, there's a red stamp here, and I can see that it was decertified 6 hours ago or something like that. I cannot use that content. It's not great, but at least they know up front. Just like when you have an issue with lack of petrol in your car. It's not great, you need to stop at the pump, but at least you know before you start. But at the same time, you want to inform the analytics leaders, the data owners, the content owners, so they can resolve the problem. So users know there's a problem. At the same time, people are there to fix the problem. And you know what? If they fix the problem super quickly, maybe end users never find out. Users will just find, again, recertified content in the last minutes or hours. Everything's great. And all of this, again, if you work in regulated industries, financial services, healthcare, and others, this is something that auditors and that your executives will be asking. What is the process of validation, process of certification, process of version control and history? So again, to have a complete audit trail or traceability of the content and the life of this content, again, moving to be more proactive as opposed to reactive. So I will demo a few things in Wiiisdom now. But again, Wiiisdom is a solution to help you with your automated validation. I talked about accuracy, the user experience, make sure the data is right, continuous monitoring, and again, certify, decertify, alert the necessary people, and have complete traceability. Wiiisdom will do all that for you. All right, so 4 demos starting now. We know a lot of companies are still on Tableau server, looking at migrating to Tableau Cloud. When you do this lift and shift, you want to make sure the migration worked well. So you want to test a lot of things. I'll show you how Wiiisdom can accelerate and do that at scale. But if you're staying with Tableau server or you're already with Tableau Cloud, it's the same thing. You will patch your Tableau server once in a while, or Tableau Cloud is updated 3 times a year. And also, even twice a month for bug fixes. So back to regulated industries, you have to test all of these new releases. So again, migration upgrades, Wiiisdom can do a lot of things for you. The other thing is functional testing, accuracy, experience, making sure that what you provide to your end users is working as expected and is accurate, as well as doing this proactive certification I was talking about just a minute ago. And I'll finish quickly with showing you our version control or version management system here. Okay, all right, first thing I will show you is about migration. So migrations and upgrades. You'll see here that I will show you, again, traceability is the name of the game here, traceability of the result of migrating or testing the upgrades of 2 different content. In this test here, it was Tableau server to Tableau Cloud. And what I've decided to do is add 17 very important views that I needed to test. And 15 tested successfully, great. But 2 of them, there's a problem. So basically, workbook A and my source, workbook B my target, or after the patch, 2 of them face a problem. Now, in the spirit of traceability and audit, you want to have details. And this is what Wiiisdom will tell you. Wiiisdom, by default, will test 11 different things for each views. And will tell you which ones passed and which ones failed. And in this case, 3 have failed. And you can see here the image comparison. So first we test the visual. This is how my dashboard looked before the migration or before the patch or the upgrade. But this is how it looked after. And what Wiiisdom will do is will even highlight in red where there are differences to accelerate the troubleshooting of this of this problem. So we see here again this tile here, this worksheet has a problem. Let's continue. One of the things we test as well is the data behind every worksheet. And now we see the worksheet profit has an issue where the data before and after is actually very different. You even have the ability to download the worksheet data set to continue troubleshooting offline. So now, profit tile, profit worksheet, there's a pattern going on here. And then we test, like I said, 11 things. More about the columns, metadata, about the filters, the parameters, even if the same worksheets exist. But now we detected another problem. In my profit worksheet, the action state filter has an issue where, well, at the source I had 49 values and I have 47 values. So clearly I have a data problem here, which is affecting my filters, which is affecting my visual. It can be something with a data source, an extract that's not working properly anymore. It can be a number of things. Again, because Wiiisdom will test as many views as you want, and we'll do these 11 tests if you want for all of them. You have peace of mind. You can prove your migration, prove your upgrades by having exact details. And in this case, what I would do, fix the problem, rerun the test on these two failed objects, and then here we go, successful migration. All right, so that was demo number 1, migrations and upgrades. Now, the second thing is making sure my content works, but also decertify or recertify if there's a problem. So let's go back in. So let's go to Tableau here, right? I'm conscious of time. Let's go to Tableau. I'm an end user, and I'm going to open this dashboard right here. Now, I'm looking at this dashboard. I need to go to a meeting, and then I'm looking at the numbers, and then what's going to happen? We can see, now this can be formatted in a number of different ways. But you see here at the top that my dashboard is decertified, and it was decertified not 6 months ago. It was decertified only an hour and 20 minutes ago. An hour and 20 minutes ago, Wiiisdom went ahead, did this continuous validation, and we detected a problem. So what did we do? We proactively decertified the content. So if any end users, happens to open this one while the problem has been fixed, we know about it, but the data owner has been informed. So let's pretend Nick is the data owner here. So Nick received a Slack, a Teams, an email, whichever, and then Nick knows, okay, there's a problem, I need to resolve this. So he will go in Wiiisdom.
I'm on it.
You're on it, thank you, Nick,
Yeah.
I love it. And then we see that with Wiiisdom, you have the ability to validate. So this is my continuous monitoring here. So Wiiisdom can validate that the data is right, validate that that the filters exist and behave as expected, that I can interact with the dashboard, and so on and so on. So, and we have a list of about 20 or 30 different ways of functional testing. So Nick went ahead, detected what the problem is, fixed it, and I says, well, I now need to recertify the content. So Nick would simply come and run manually. So now when it's continuous monitoring, obviously it's scheduled at regular interval. But now Nick's fixed the problem and says, okay, I'm ready to run the test to make sure that I indeed really fixed everything, didn't break something else, and then I want to recertify the content. All right, Wiiisdom will start in the next few seconds. And then what Wiiisdom will do is go through that list here, verify are the different criteria and policies and rules to make sure that this dashboard works as expected. And if we don't detect any problem, see my hands are in the air here, no cheating. So Wiiisdom is really interacting with Tableau. And because it's now okay, everything works as expected. If I go back in Tableau and I refresh this workbook, we'll see that the problem has been resolved. And we see that in a second. Oh, great news. It's been recertified right now. I'm in the UK, so that's why there's an hour difference for those of you in Europe. So here we go. I'm an end user. I see this. Wow, it was it's certified minutes ago. I can definitely trust this. All right. So functional testing, accuracy, experience, because we validate performance as well, and automatic certification or decertification of content. And I'll finish here with version control. Now, once again, if you work in a regulated industry, especially if you are with Tableau Cloud, you will know that revision history comes with some limitation. You can have only 10 revisions. People can go ahead and delete revisions. Again, for traceability, it's obviously not good. So you don't have the full details of who did what. So it comes with limitations. So Tableau approached us, about a year and a half ago, and we chose to work with Tableau on implementing a more advanced version control or more advanced revision history capabilities, especially for regulated industries. And what's great, and this is the same with all the Wiiisdom tools, you haven't seen any command lines or code or scripting. Of course, we enable it, but if you're non-technical users, everything in Wiiisdom is available to you. And we see here that without any effort, I will go to one of my content here. You see here that I have a workbook, and this workbook, I started to make versions back in November last year, and I have way more than 10 versions, and I'm on Tableau Cloud. And in terms of audit trail and traceability, you see that Patrick restored an older version, or Patrick updated this workbook with a new version. So everything, you have the audit trail of who did what. You can add comments, but what is really powerful is that you can, there you go, you can even preview. So back in January, I'm in production for some reason. I had something with a beta title, and there was a problem with where filters were not reset. They were all with multiple values. I was not very happy with this. Now, at any given time, you can compare between versions, and you'll see here that I'm comparing this version of January, which is in Tableau right now. We can see they are exactly the same version, 100%. But if there was any differences, they would be highlighted in red, just like I've shown you before. And at any given time, you can restore the version, or you can even download locally to work offline, do more troubleshooting, and so on. So there you have it. If I go back to my slides here before the conclusion, there you have it. Migration and upgrades, full traceability, and do it at scale. Do a lot of testing and prove your migrations, prove your upgrades. Use Wiiisdom to continuously monitor your content to make sure that it's accurate with the right user experience, and you let your end users know and your data owners know when there's a problem through certification, and do change management as well, thanks to version control. All right, so unlock your AI potential. So Tableau Pulse and agents, they work with with data sources in the background, make sure the data is right, support your regulation, scale your analytics, reduce your cost of testing and projects like upgrades and database migrations as well. We support a lot of companies, and at the end of the day, Wiiisdom is there to support you with your data and analytics governance strategy. Before I go through the questions, if you have your phones and you're interested in some recommended literacy, which is all available on our website, we released a document, a blog on analytics governance, why it's important. For those of you doing Tableau Server, Tableau Clouds upgrades, we release a step-by-step checklist, not only of what Wiiisdom can do, as a full projecting what you want to be looking at. You may have heard that with a few weeks ago, Tableau released something called the Tableau Cloud Release Preview Sites. So if you're with Tableau Plus, you have access to release preview sites, which means that Tableau will give you a site with the next release of Tableau ahead of patching your production sites. So again, if you want to do regression testing between current prod and the prod of the future, so you have 2 weeks to do this. If you want to test at scale, Wiiisdom can help, and Wiiisdom was chosen as the launch partner, which was great. And finally, before I check if there's any questions, if there's anybody here in regulated industries, we picked the example of GXP, but that would work for other regulations in financial services and so on. Our CEO, Sébastien, alongside many people of the product management team at Tableau, we co-wrote or co-released this white paper on analytics governance. I really recommend you go ahead and download this one. Everything, like I said, is available on our website. All right. I will go quickly for the questions. I realize we're a little bit over time. I appreciate everybody who's still around. There's a question from Jonathan, and Jonathan asks, Does version control look at the older version as if it has current data, or does it show what the data was available at that time? Very interesting question. And no, it's the data at that time. So basically, when there's a new version, we are grabbing that version as it is at this point in time. And when you compare it to today, we compare it, well, with the version you have today. Now, of course, the data evolves all the time, which is why we have functionalities today, and we have some coming in the future as well, where you can decide to test with or without data. For instance, maybe you just want to test or see the differences between the layout, or maybe you want to force data as a specific date. You know, it doesn't matter if the data is for the 1st of January. If the dashboard or the data sources are accurate, they should return the same information. So yeah, so the answer is, by default, the data at the moment of the snapshot or the moment of the comparison, but we give you further abilities here as well. So I hope, Jonathan, that answered your questions. And yeah, feel free to get in touch with us directly to know more. Okay, we're out of time. I will stop with this question here. Nick, I don't know if you want to say a few words before we close this webinar.
Just thank you very much for everyone for joining. Thanks for having me, Patrick.
Always a pleasure,
evening, everyone.
All right. Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining. Indeed, same here. Have a great evening and speak soon.
Bye, everyone.